Dinner? Okay. I was gonna say, that's about to be very impressive. You did it. I went and bent his ear for a minute. Maybe that's the issue. Not at all. Right on time. It is 6 p.m. and we will call this regular meeting, the June 4th regular meeting of the Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian to order. First on our agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all please rise as you're able to join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 on our agenda is a roll call. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Here.
Clerk Godfrey is here. Treasurer DeShane?
Here.
Trustee Sumlin?
Here.
Trustee Trezise?
Here.
And Trustee Wilson?
Here.
All board members are present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 4 on our agenda is presentations. We have none this evening. And so item 5 is citizens address agenda items and not agenda items. There are several opportunities for public comment at tonight's meeting. Members of the public who wish to address our agenda or any item not on our agenda have an opportunity to do so at the beginning of the meeting as well as near the end of the meeting. Those who wish to address the board must complete a green card located on the table near the door and present that card to the board or a member of the township staff prior to the start of public comment. When it's your turn, the supervisor, that's me, will call up the next speaker to the podium to speak on the topics indicated. While it's not required, it's helpful for the sake of our meeting minutes if you provide your name and address for the record at the beginning of your remarks. Citizens are required to limit comments to 3 minutes. An automated system keeps track of the time, and an indicator light and audible beep will alert you when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time has expired. Members of the board value comments from the public on meeting format, and rules restrict board members from engaging in conversation with commenters or answering questions directly. Questions and concerns may be addressed by board members at a later time or may be referred to a member of the township staff to follow up on. Please remember to address all comments to the board and or the board's chair and not to individual board members or others in the audience. With that said, we have not collected any green cards. Would anyone like to speak before the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll close public comment at 6:03 p.m. Next on our agenda is item 6, interim manager report. And for that, we'll turn things over to our interim township manager, Tim Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. A few things. Once again, let me publicly thank Deputy Manager Opsimer and Neighborhood and Economic Development Director Clark for ably keeping things moving while I was gone for a couple weeks enjoying the Emerald Isle. But we're back at it. So a few things I want to update everyone on. First and foremost, there was some discussion earlier in the interview process for the vacant seat about the police staffing, and everyone is aware of the plan that Chief Grillo put in place to, with the board's approval, to start moving this forward, and I'm happy to say it's working. The light is definitely at the end of the tunnel. I can see it. As of July 1, we'll get 2 people back from paternity leave and 1 officer out of training, so we'll be up 3. By August, we should have potentially 3 new academy students that would, in the end, get us to full capacity. And by December, all of our training that's currently happening should be complete, and we should be at 42. So thank you to the board for your leadership on this. We couldn't have done it without you. And thank you to Chief Grillo and his staff for making this happen then. Outside of the Nokomis Center, you may notice a new garden has gone in, and I just want to briefly talk about this. This is a joint effort with MSU. It's, I believe, called the Three Sisters Garden, and don't quote me on that because I have limited information right now. But I want to point out, because big things are happening there, it will end up being a research study location for bee pollination. There are going to be multiple concentric gardens there that allow for the study of pollinators in the garden. And then there will also be a large dream catcher installed, harkening back to the heritage of the area. So you'll start to see things happen there, and through the leadership of Mr. Ostrander and in the Comas Center, this is a good addition to the area, and it will be a very nice thing once it's done. Staff is working hard on utility billing and moving this in a positive direction. This was, I would argue, one of the two things that sort of got most screwed up by COVID between this and rental inspections. We got rental inspections back on track, and we're working on utility billing. We've got a great staff that's working on it. Deputy Manager Opsimer, once again, has grabbed this bull by the horns, and along with Director Titoff and Director Ayani, we're really trying to move this forward. We did expedite the length of a temp that we were bringing on because of a maternity leave in Treasury. We brought them on early to help us with utility billing, so then we can get work on process with the full-time utility billing members. And so we're moving in the right direction here, but there's more to come on that. Marshall Park is not officially open yet. It is mostly in, but Director Wazinski is working on scheduling some final details. And so once we have a schedule for that, I will relay to the board potential ribbon cutting days for that new park. But, you know, I think you could probably enjoy the slide now if you wanted to. And one of the things that you will see on your next agenda is, we'll talk about it later this evening, but on your next agenda is sort of an early priorities discussion for the budget. And I just want to briefly mention this so the board can start thinking about it. I will also follow up with an email. But ultimately, you know, one of the things I heard when I started here is just that the budget process was a little bit disjointed. There was a little lack of back and forth. And so with the board and the management team. And so what I'm trying to do is bring forward a very early discussion of priorities. I've at least got the top level thoughts from staff, and then we'll relay those to the board and get the board's feedback and the top level ideas from the board, and then we will start to get in the nuts and bolts. I'm guaranteeing nothing makes it in, but I want to sort of lay out sort of where everyone's thinking is and get your thinking early in the process so we can try and create as collaborative as a budget as possible this year. Lastly, I want to give the public an update on Trader Joe's. I don't know anything. We do not have a date yet for when they're opening. As soon as we know, I promise I will share it with everyone. But I suspect that they're just going to open the doors one day and say, hey, come shop. But it is moving right along. They are very close. That's all I have right now. I'd be happy to discuss any of that or anything else.
Any questions for Manager Schmidt? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda was item 7, board member reports of activities and announcements. Any board members with activities and announcements? Trustee Trezise.
Just to remind the public that next week is the Juneteenth celebration, and there's a day at the park in the lake on the 15th, and I don't know if there's something earlier in the week. I think that's the main celebration is the 15th, and then 2 weeks later is the Meridian Appreciation or Celebrate Meridian Festival, and so keep your summer open.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? I will go ahead and say that since our last meeting, I attended the Memorial Day celebration at Glendale Cemetery, which is, as always, organized capably by Clerk Guthrie. It was a lovely ceremony despite some drizzly weather. I know that many of us were there to celebrate with the veterans who were there celebrating as well. And as always, the Meridian Community Band did a wonderful job livening up the ceremony. And we had a new bagpiper, of course, and who filled the shoes ably. So,
That's great.
yeah, he was wonderful. So thank you to Clerk Guthrie for putting that event together. That was lovely. Treasurer DeShane.
I will announce that a week from tonight is our first of 3 listening sessions we're having right here in this room. And we invited people by the neighborhood that they are living in to attend those. So we don't have everyone showing up at one and no one at the other one. So they begin next Tuesday, the 11th at 6 p.m. Thank you.
And those are here in this room now as opposed to elsewhere. So please feel free to stop by. Any other comments? All right, seeing none. Move on to agenda item 8, which is approval of the agenda. Do we have approval of the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Moved by trustee Wilson, supported by treasurer DeShane. Any comments, questions, or additions to the agenda? Seeing none. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? And the agenda passes. Next up on our agenda is item 9, a consent agenda. On our consent agenda this evening, we have communications with the township, which have come in via various means. We have the minutes from our May 21st, 2024 regular meeting and the bills. Any questions or comments on any of the items on our consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Moved by trustee Wilson. Any support?
Support.
Supported by treasurer DeShane. Any comments? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote, and we'll ask Clerk Guthrie to please call the roll.
Supervisor Hendrickson.
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Trezise.
Yes.
And trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. All right, next up on our agenda is item 10, questions for the attorney. We have none. Item 11, hearings. We have none. That brings us to agenda item 12A, which is our first action item of the evening. And the first action item of the evening is the township trustee appointment. So, as a brief recap, since my name is on the memoranda here, the board did meet at 4 o'clock this afternoon and conducted interviews with 3 finalists for the vacancy that we have on the township board for township trustee. The 3 applicants were selected from a pool of 8 applicants who applied, and we had a subcommittee of this board who met to winnow those down to the 3 that we ended up interviewing. I think as a general note, we had 3 excellent interviews and really 8 excellent candidates from what I understand. And this is not an easy decision, as it never is, to appoint someone to this board. So the 3 candidates that we did interview this afternoon were James Etherton, James McCurtis, and Jeffrey Rombach. And so we had a lot of interesting discussion, a lot of diverse feedback and thoughts as to, answers to our questions. And we're very pleased that we had an opportunity to speak to all 3. With that, we have this item on our agenda this evening for action to fill the vacancy. I'd be happy to entertain discussion or to move directly into making a motion if anyone would like to do that. Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Hendrickson. Before discussion, I just have a clarifying question for you. Is there a time limit component to this appointment? Is there a time constraint? Are we under any kind of time pressure? Could you explain how all of that works?
Sure. So as it has been described to me by our legal counsel, is what I will say, we have 45 days from the date the vacancy occurs to fill the vacancy. And the vacancy occurs when the board accepts basically that there is a vacancy. So in this case, the board appointed me on May 9th. We have 45 days from May 9th when I vacated my seat as trustee to fill that vacancy. The good news is we've been very efficient and we are not to 45 days yet. However, we will reach 45 days prior to our next meeting, which is why we're taking action on it this evening, as I understand it. And so that's why we were making sure we had it on our agenda for action tonight, so that we could do that. One other thing of note, since you mentioned the time frame of the appointment, this is an appointment to fill the vacancy for the remainder of the term that technically began in 2020. So the time period of this vacancy, the term of this vacancy ends on November 20th, 2024. And because we have already passed the filing deadline for the 2024 election, whoever we appoint would, if they're not already on the ballot, would not be able to be on the ballot for the 2024 to 2028 term. So that was something that we attempted to highlight with everyone who applied. But that was certainly worth pointing out for anyone at home who's watching now.
Okay. So, is it okay to have discussion?
Please, yeah.
Now then, okay. Thank you to the candidates, first off, for applying. It's not an easy thing to do, to apply or run for office. And I've been in the staff position before, and it can be intimidating. And it can be intimidating as a public person coming to speak in front of the board as well. And so I appreciate anyone who runs for office, puts their hat in the ring, and sits on any of the boards and commissions with the township, or anyone for that matter. The candidates that we had today, what stuck out to me, what were answers that basically related to the response you gave, Supervisor Hendrickson gave regarding our biggest challenge coming up, which I am lockstep in line with. And the biggest challenge we have is hiring our next township manager, because everything goes along with that. And there has, like Trustee Trezise stated in his challenge when he first came on board, was being thrown into the middle of that. And it was a tough decision. It was a tough thing to do. There were lots of issues that we had to look at regarding that. And so for me, when I listened to the candidates today, the biggest items or responses that stood out in my mind were all related to that. Maybe you didn't thoroughly read the gigantic budget that's, I don't know how many inches that is, 5 inches thick. Maybe you didn't read it in its entirety. Maybe there were a few things that couldn't be found on the website. Maybe answers were a little off here or there, whatever it may be. The answers I was looking for were how this township was going to make a cultural change and how this township was going to handle the normal day-to-day things that we normally do and the budget coming up with possibly a new manager in place by that time. And so those were the items that stuck out the most in my mind. And our second candidate, which I'm trying to find my notes for his responses.
Mr. Etherton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Etherton. He, in his response regarding the township manager, he talked about the manager being the CEO and keeping the processes in line and the policies in line and keep things on the track. And so, of course, I'm sitting on the policy review committee with Trustee Trezise, and so those are things that are important to me, especially as I'm writing processes in our department before I leave at the end of November. Keeping those processes in line and having somebody who can pick up those reins and see what those are, see where the holes are, those are very important things. So I thought his statement regarding the processes, and a manager manages the process, directors direct, leaders lead, those kinds of things I thought was a very good answer that he had. And then our third candidate, Jeffrey Rombach, I'm sorry, Jeff. I have the same thing. If somebody calls me Debbie, I'm in trouble. So I get it. I get it with the name. Also had a very good response, I thought, for what I was looking for in the role between a board member and the township manager. While I did ask a question about it and what the position was, his answer was very well spoken in regards to the manager focusing on strategy and oversight function in a partnership with not only the board, but the staff who's here, and making sure that all of that is flowing. So those, I may have more to say, but those are my initial thoughts on the candidates with what I thought were the top two answers overall from the however many questions we asked people, 13 questions of each candidate. I thought those were the best two answers in regards to the township manager's role and how it functions.
Thank you. Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you, Supervisor. I too was impressed with all three candidates, and I applaud the committee. And I know you had 8 good ones to begin with, and bringing the 3 to us. Mr. Rombach, Jeff, healthcare experience, and his comment that we're all running healthcare organizations these days because of the high cost of healthcare is really appropriate to our issues in our budget. Mr. Etherton, a senior IT leader, and his extensive budgeting and contract negotiation experience would be very valuable member of the board. And then Mr. McCurtis, with his experience with Mesa, all 3 of them stood out for me. I think Mr. McCurtis has stood out the most for me because he did seem to have researched the job the most and our documents the most in preparation for it. Also, I'm impressed that he's been part of our planning commission and our ZBA. And there's really no better preparation for the township board than being on the planning commission. The planning commission does as much homework before meetings as this board does oftentimes. They really have to immerse themselves in the zoning ordinances to make the recommendations they do to the board. In some cases, they make the final approval. So I think for that reason, I thought Mr. McCurtis really stood out. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and move to appoint James L. McCurtis Jr. to fill the vacancy as Meridian Township trustee for a term ending November 20th, 2024.
It's been moved by Treasurer DeShane. Do we have a support?
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Mr. DeShane, do you have any comments to add?
Just what I stated. If need be, I'll make some more comments later, but I want to hear other board members first.
Trustee Wilson.
I was so happy to be on the subcommittee that took a look at all of the candidates that came forward. I think these 3 candidates really stood out for various reasons, at which were echoed when you came and did your actual presentation to us today. I think there's strengths with every one of the candidates, but we have to face the practicality of this is a 5-month term. And I will tell you, I was on the Planning Commission for 4 years, 30 years ago. I was on the board 30 years ago for 4 years, and I've been 2 years this round on the board. There is such a steep learning curve to understand the operations of both the Planning Commission and the Township Board. And the Planning Commission is definitely the springboard to being on the board. I think many of us have served on the Planning Commission, and it's a critical skill set to develop to understand land issues. And so for that reason, I am supporting Mr. McCurtis because he has that basic understanding of operations related to how we work at the Planning Commission, how we work at the board level. So there's not going to be a great deal of time for him to get up to speed with the projects that we have in front of us, the critical issues of marijuana, selecting a new manager, and a critical budget year. I have confidence that you have a particular strength in that area because you've been hanging out at the township. So that is why I am supporting you. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Trustee Trezise.
I would agree with the nomination of Mr. McCurtis. I had the pleasure of serving on the Planning Commission with him for the better part of a year. I've also served with him on the ZBA. I have found him to be very conscientious. He is aware of what's before us. He has done his homework. He is respectful. He listens, and he also expresses his opinion and votes accordingly. So I think he would be a great addition. I agree with Guthrie that hiring a new manager is a serious step for this board and a very important step. But an individual trustee is one of 7. And so I believe he has the temperament, I think he has the skill level, and I would, for that reason, I would support him as the new trustee.
Okay. Anyone else? Clerk Guthrie?
I'll add to that. I will say that it was trustee Wilson, myself, and trustee Sunland who was on the review committee. And it was Mr. McCurtis's application that stood out above all the other applicants for all 3 of us on the review committee. All 3 of us agreed right away. It was the first one each one of us picked in the review committee to come back and do an interview. So I did like I did like your response in regards to being here for 23 years, an Okemos resident for 23 years. I just wasn't a big fan of the response about the township manager response. That is very important to me. I will support the rest of the board in the selection. And I do value your time that you've given to this township for certain.
Anyone else? Trustee Sunland?
Yeah, it's always a difficult decision when you have 3 applicants that are so qualified. But I do think that, given this position is only gonna be there for 5 months, I think that's exactly, needs somebody that can kind of ease into it and has some previous experience. So I think that's what we're looking for at this moment in time.
Thank you. I'll simply add that I agree. We had 3 excellent applicants. To me, Mr. Rombach and Mr. McCurtis both stood out as excellent interviews before the board. I will also be supporting Mr. McCurtis. I think Trustee Wilson mentioned something that's very important, which is, these decisions that we make at the very first meeting, we'll be talking about an adult use marijuana.
Right.
And that's something that the Planning Commission has been steeped in, just like we have for the better part of several years now. And I think that the ability to come in with a full understanding of the history of that and get up to speed quickly is very important. And, I served on a planning commission for a number of years. I don't think we crossed over at any point. I think you might have filled my spot when I left. But it is definitely a valuable place to get to know the community. And to Mr. Rombach, what I will say is if the board votes as it seems to be indicating it will this evening, that does mean there will be a vacancy on the planning commission. And
We know you turned something else down.
and what I will say is, you mentioned creating walkable spaces downtown in your interview and the desire to make some of these land use decisions with regard to, bringing in additional restaurants and, creating that kind of atmosphere. The planning commission would be an excellent spot for you to get involved with the township and get to influence that very thing. It's something that like Trustee Wilson said, several of us have done on our way to the board. And if public service in the township is something you're committed to, which it seems like you are, because why else would you apply? I would highly recommend applying for the planning commission because I think you'd be an excellent addition to it. With that said, I think, Trustee
Can I
Trisette.
just add that the same comments could be made with Mr. Etherton?
Yes, that's true.
There
too.
are a number of boards and commissions that we have openings on. And
This is
with your background, the DDA, the Economic Development Corporation, there's a number of places where your expertise would be extremely valuable.
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and to that point, you're right. We did hear from Mr. Atherton about the Village of Okemos. DDA is always looking for more people.
Yep.
And there's a body that deals directly with that area in downtown Okemos, and certainly we need more voices involved in all of our committees. With that said, I think that gave all of us an opportunity to speak. Seeing no further comments, the motion is before us to appoint James McCurtis to fill a vacancy as Meridian Township trustee for a term ending November 20th, 2024. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Trezise.
Yes.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
And Supervisor Hendrickson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Clap.
Thank you to all of the candidates who applied and interviewed, and all the candidates who applied and were not selected to interview. I think this process, which we've now gone through several times over the last several years, only serves to reinforce what a committed and dedicated group of residents and citizens that we have. And we're so thankful that that we have such a wonderful group of people who are willing to serve. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that said, we'll move on to agenda item 12B, which is the appointment of a supervisor pro tem. This one comes from me. So, as you all know, as when I was serving as a trustee, I was the appointed supervisor pro tem for Supervisor Jackson prior to her retirement, a position I thought was emeritus at the time. Turned out not to be so. And so it is not lost on me the importance of making sure that we are prepared should we ever have the need for a supervisor pro tem to step in, should I ever fall ill or become absent, which I do not have any intention of doing, but again, you never know.
Right.
And so to that end, we have traditionally appointed folks for the term of a year. My recommendation is to appoint someone through the end of the year, or in this case, through the end of the term, in case one of us is not elected. And so to that end, I am this evening nominating Trustee Peter Trezise to serve as Supervisor Pro Tem for the Township Board in any meeting where I am absent, and also giving him the authority, the statutory authority of Township Supervisor when I delegate as such in writing ahead of time. And so for that, I have left a motion in front of us, should anyone choose to make it. Clerk Guthrie.
I move that the board appoint through November 21, 2024, trustee Peter Trezise to act as supervisor pro tem at any meeting of the township board wherein the supervisor is absent and may act with the statutory authority of township supervisor when specifically delegated that authority by the supervisor in writing.
Support.
Moved by Clerk Guthrie, supported by Trustee Wilson. I suppose it's worth asking before.
Yeah.
we
Do you want to do
vote
it?
on this. Do you accept this nomination?
I will happily fill the job as long as you don't get sick.
It's not my intention. Honestly, the more likely scenario is that one of my children gets sick.
That's true,
and
too.
I am forced to be with them.
Well, as you know, I've run enough meetings that I can get through a meeting if we have to.
Yes, indeed. So, very well. Any further comments on this? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes,
And the clerk votes yes. Motion carries 6-0.
fabulous. We are covered then.
Congratulations.
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 All right. Agenda item 12C is next. This is a resolution recognizing June 24 as Pride Month in Meridian Township. So for this, I will simply say that we have recognized Pride Month in Meridian Township each and every year that I've been involved, so long as I can remember, and long before that, as I understand it. And that this is a very important thing to do to ensure that our residents know that we support all residents, and we specifically support the LGBTQ+ community during Pride Month. I was very pleased last year to have been involved in our inaugural Pride event, which occurs not in Pride Month, of course, since we have lots of events going on in June, as Trustee Trezise pointed out, but in August. And we're very thrilled to be bringing that event back on, I believe, August 10th is the date that we've set aside for that. And if I've gotten that wrong, I'm sure Director Wazinski will be here texting me in a few minutes, telling me how wrong I've been. And so for that, I've brought forward a resolution recognizing June 2024 as Pride Month in Meridian Township. Trustee Wilson.
I move to approve the resolution recognizing June 2024 as Pride Month in Meridian Township.
Support?
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. Further comments? Clerk Guthrie.
May I add a whereas to this? Can I add?
Yeah, you can move to amend the resolution, sir.
On September 19th, 2017, the Meridian Township Board made an official pledge of support to stand against hate and discrimination and affirm that Michigan is a welcoming state for all. And I think that it's important to include that official pledge of support from that board in 2017.
Is it in the resolution?
It's not.
It is not.
Okay.
That date is not in the resolution. So the resolution reads, whereas Meridian Township is a welcoming place where people, families, and institutions thrive, and the contributions of all persons are celebrated and valued. But then it goes on to further actually take a pledge to stand against hate and discrimination and affirm that Michigan is a welcoming state for all.
Okay. So are you looking to add a whereas or a therefore be it resolved?
Add a whereas.
Okay.
Possibly just after the December 2016 whereas, which is the second page, top of the second page.
So it's in the resolution.
Yes.
Right.
So to add that in, to add this,
Okay. So I think just for the sake of clarity for staff and for the minutes, I would like you to make a motion and tell us where you want to put it and what you want to say
oh
specifically.
gosh, boy.
So it's a move to amend the motion.
Move to amend the motion to add after the December 6, 2016 whereas, an additional whereas, okay?
That states.
Yeah.
All right, so that part's easy. That states, whereas at a regular meeting of the Township Board on September 19, 2017, the Meridian Township Board officially pledged support to stand against hate and discrimination and affirm that Michigan should be a welcoming state for all. Is that good?
Semicolon and.
And, semicolon and.
All right, a motion has been made to amend the resolution. Do we have a support?
I'll support.
Supported by Trustee Trezise. Any comments on the motion to amend? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion to amend carries. Any discussion on the main motion of the resolution as amended? Seeing none, I'll just simply say thank you for catching something that I missed in my trying to catalog all the various things the Township Board has done over the years to support the LGBT community.
I happen to have the resolutions at my fingertips in the office, you know?
That's helpful. That is helpful.
Could
All
you, Supervisor Hendrickson, could you repeat who made the original motion and support? for
That
the
was
record?
moved by Trustee Wilson and supported by Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you.
For the main motion.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. All right. Thank you very much. The next up on our agenda is item 12D, a resolution in recognition of the celebration of Juneteenth. So this is another motion that we have made several years in a row, recognizing the importance of Juneteenth to our community and celebrating it as we do at both the state and federal level now. And we're very pleased for that. Also, we held our first annual Juneteenth celebration last year, which was obviously a success since we have brought it back again to be another event this year for the Juneteenth over Lake Lansing, which, as we've pointed out, is coming up in 11 days on June 15th over at Lake Lansing Park. So before us this evening is a motion to approve the resolution in recognition and celebration of Juneteenth. Do we have any motions on this? Trustee Trezise.
Thank you. I move to approve the resolution in recognition and celebration of Juneteenth.
Support.
Moved by Trustee Trezise, supported by Trustee Wilson. Any comments, Trustee Trezise?
No, I think it's entitled. I mean, it's time that this and should be continuing forever. And so recognizing this on an annual basis is the least we can do. And having a celebration for all of our residents and those in the area is appropriate, and it's a very important day in the history of this country.
Trustee Wilson?
I'll just say ditto.
Anyone else, any comments to make? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution passes. All right. Item 12E is, we've had a lot of memorial and resolutions this time around. This is the resolution supporting National Flag Day 2024. This resolution has been also passed for many years and celebrates our dedication to Flag Day as well as our recognition and participation in the Flags Over Meridian program that's organized annually by the Kiwanis of Hazlet-Okemos, which I believe Treasurer DeShane has played a major role in over the last few years. And so before us this evening is a motion to approve the resolution supporting National Flag Day 2024. Treasurer DeShane.
I move to approve the resolution supporting National Flag Day 2024.
Support.
Supported by Clerk Guthrie. Any comments on the resolution, Treasurer DeShane?
I'll just say, in terms of Flags Over Meridian, many clubs have tried this. Many will get 100, 200 subscribers. We have nearly 1,000 every year. So our residents really, and the club pours that money back into the township in various ways. One of them to sponsor the youth sports pavilion at the new marketplace on the green. So it's great. So our residents get their flags, and the Kiwanis enhances the township facilities like that one.
Other comments, Clerk Guthrie?
No, I did think, I thought I would see them up though through July for some reason. I thought
Well-
maybe they'll leave them up, they're so beautiful.
They one time left them up from Memorial Day until July 4th, but
Yeah.
that kind of wears out the flags. That's a month
Yeah,
and a half.
okay.
So they
Yeah.
take them down from Memorial Day, they'll go back up next week. And they'll be
Yeah.
up from Flag Day until the 4th of July.
Till the 4th.
Well, I appreciate it during the Memorial Day event, having the flags out
It was a
there.
nice touch, wasn't it?
It's,
Very appropriate.
yes, very appropriate contribution.
Yeah, I'll simply add that I am one of the newer recipients of Flags Over Meridian. And I failed to tell my children that it was coming. And so they were over the moon that there was a giant flag in our front yard all of a sudden without any warning. So thank you to the Kiwanis of Hazlet-Okemos for bringing that to my household.
Perhaps Phil would like to make a plug for the program. See if we can get 2,000 flags out there.
Well, anyone that would like to add a flag for Flags of Meridian can go to the website of the Kiwanis Club of Hazlet-Okemos, and easy to find, and there's a flag subscription link right on there, and you can link on that and have a flag for the next flag holiday. The cost is $40 per year, and you get a flag up in front of your home for 6 flag holidays.
Holidays.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution supporting National Flag Day, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 13A, listening session planning. And this is also important for our newest trustee, since some things to add to the calendar. So in 2023, as a matter of context, I suppose, Meridian Township Board held 6 listening sessions throughout the community. This was between September and November of 2023. And we took those on the road. We did them at various schools and libraries and sat on very small chairs.
Very small.
But we packed the room. There were over 300 or 400 residents, we estimate, that had attended these events. And we got a lot of good feedback out of them. And so as such, the board has saw fit to schedule 3 more. And we have those 3 coming up in very short order. As Treasurer DeShane alluded to in his comments earlier this evening, our first one is June 11th here in this room from 6 to 7:30. We also have them on June 25th and 27th from 6 to 7:30 in this room. And mailings have gone out to all township residents and inviting them to attend one of these 3 sessions. And so, as such, I thought it might be a good idea to take a moment before that to discuss who's going to be moderating those, since we had moderators in the past, what agenda topics we might wish to bring up before the question and answer period, and who from staff might be here, so we don't need to trouble anyone else who with coming to these who may not be absolutely necessary. So I presented in the packet in our memorandum the proposed moderators, agenda topics, and suggested staff, which are merely to get the juices flowing and have great discussion about it. Does anyone have anything they'd like to discuss about that? Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Hendrickson. So with what I'm reading here, these listening session agenda topics, this is similar but not similar to what we did before.
It's pretty
It's
similar.
pretty similar.
Because I don't see a treasurer update with taxes. I don't see election update with the clerk.
And we can,
So
we can certainly add those.
Okay.
Yeah, I just was presenting a couple of thoughts, but
So I raise it because I'm wondering if the intent is to be different than the previous listening session, so we're more focused on these are the sort of things we heard from residents at the other listening sessions, and so that is why we're focusing on these listening sessions, on these topics for these upcoming listening sessions. Or should I be prepared to talk about elections at all?
I mean, I presume that you're prepared to talk about elections.
Yes, I am. I can talk your ear off.
That's item 6.
That's why he didn't put it on here.
Yeah.
So I guess to give some context to the agenda topics that I put forward. Obviously, the Community Senior Center project is one that's a relatively new idea that we'll be bringing out
Yes.
to bring forward. I put that toward the top so that because we had it on the agenda for the last ones at the bottom of the agenda, and we often were running out of time because we were talking about roads and police so much. Which, don't get me wrong, happy to talk about roads and police.
You were very popular.
You were. But I thought that it might be a good idea to put the community center up toward the top so we could
Yep.
have that pitch, or have that discussion earlier. It was not my intent. I nearly forgot to include the election update and the treasurer's update, but I leave it to you two if you'd like to add to that.
I like the agenda you've got here. We'll be available to talk about those topics, and we can have handouts as we did last time for
Yeah,
people to information. But I think these 4 topics, community senior center idea, economic development, especially the 4 corners of Okemos, police update, and local roads. I've been out knocking on doors for a month now as a candidate for the upcoming election, and these are the 4 things I'm hearing at the doors people want to talk about. They want to know what's happening with the Hazlet 4 Corners. They want to know what this idea of the senior community center is. They're excited to know that we've got our police staffing up to 39 officers again. And in many cases, they're excited about the roads that are been done or want to know when their road is next. So I think these 4 topics, in terms of the core of it, when I talk about, would be good. And we call these listening sessions. Let's make sure there's lots of time left for us to listen and not just proselytize to them about what a great township we are. We are a great township, but we also want to hear from them ways that they would like to and get their questions answered and their concerns.
Trustee Wilson.
I think because we want to leave plenty of time at the end or during the conversation for questions and comments, we want to keep it to an hour. So we have a tendency to run long on these. And so I would suggest that, Phil, if you bring that tax sheet that shows where the taxes go, because that is something we're hearing at the doors, that we're getting all this money through taxes. No, actually, it's a tiny fraction that comes to us. And if you do a brief election update, you know, just telling
I
about the
can be
primary.
very
and so on.
brief. Hold up my
August 6th.
pamphlet. Yeah.
Got it, that's right, yep, and absentee ballots, make sure you get on the absentee ballot list if you want to be. The one thing that I would suggest is that the hot topics that people want to hear about are roads and police. So I would put those at the top, and I would move, community center's going to raise a lot of questions, and I know as chair of the subcommittee that, the task force that's working on that. So I would move that down to maybe the third item. Because I will have maps, I'll have drawings that we can put up on a screen. I also will have the interior shots that we can hand out so that people can see what our concept is of taking the old Yonkers building and creating a new community center that incorporates the senior center. It's a really exciting, not so cheap opportunity that we'd really like to bring to the community because we have never had anything like that. So I'd just move it down a little. Thank you.
How do we feel about that? Clerk Guthrie?
Yeah, I'm good with that, and I would definitely not split the police update and the local road update. I would not
wouldn't
separate
either.
those two. I would keep those two together wherever they are in this lineup.
Yep.
Okay. Any other malcontent with that plan? No? Okay, so then we'll move Community Senior Center down to number 4.
That'd be fine.
Economic Development number 5, Police Update number 2, Local Roads number 3. And we will do our best to encourage Chief Grillo and Deputy Manager Opsmer, if they're going to be giving presentations on those two topics, to remain brief.
You're brief.
You're brief, I'm not worried about
We're
you.
not worried about you.
Like, I think what we're probably doing is trying to keep police chief.
And we'll keep the economic development revitalization relatively brief. I can knock that out pretty quickly.
I think there are going to be a lot of questions about Village of Okemos.
And I will have a very few answers, unfortunately. But
We
I'm
can
trying to get some additional time for roads because I know that that is a big topic. So
Yeah.
I think we can shave a minute or two off of each of ours to give Deputy Manager Opsmer a couple more minutes to talk about
Right.
roads.
I do think it is worth expressing that PIF is still appreciated,
Yes.
not just from you all.
That is always my MO.
Understood. Treasurer Boucher.
Question about the hour limit. Are you suggesting an hour presentation and a half an hour for questions, or that we're trying to keep it to an hour?
No, it's an hour and a half.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we give a full half an hour unscheduled time for questions.
Yes.
I agree.
And questions may come in the course of that particular
Yes.
issue.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should discourage people if they want to talk about roads. Let's talk about roads at that point, but more of a balance of us talking and us listening.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think, sort of, we'll take a few questions on each topic as they go on, and then we'll encourage people that will come back to questions at the end, just so we can get through all the things that are on that.
We might want to put some time limits by topic
Sure.
in order to make sure we're moving on. Not that rigid, but a goal of no more than 10 minutes on this or 15 minutes on that, and
Yeah, I
we
think
can
if
roll with it.
we're keeping it to an hour, then it's about 15 minutes per
Yeah.
topic.
But you got to give Deborah and Phil an opportunity to talk too.
I'll be 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I can be 30.
But I will be too.
Come on now.
When we get introduced, I'll talk about the flyer. and
Okay.
that. Yeah.
That sounds,
Well, we have moderators for each of these sessions, so it'll be up to
Yeah.
the moderator to keep us to those time limits.
Yeah. I promise.
We'll pass the gavel around. Is everyone comfortable with the moderators as presented here?
that's fine.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. McCurtis, if you'd like to be added as a moderator to one of those 3 dates, you let us know and we'll do that. You'll be, in one case, you won't have even attended a meeting yet. So if you're welcome to just listen also. But it's up to you if you'd like to join. And then, is there anyone else from the staff that we'd like to be present? Or that perhaps interim manager Schmidt suggests he might want to have present?
That's good.
What do you think?
Do we
No,
know?
I think given the list of topics, we're comfortable with this.
Okay.
I will have a conversation with Director Clark, and see if she would like to attend, but
Yeah.
I can certainly handle that portion, given that we work so closely together.
Clerk Osborne?
Great. Director Schmidt, will you be having a staff member attend to take notes from this? Or would you like me to take meeting notes as the clerk?
Was not planning on having a staff member taking notes, so
Okay, I will do
certainly
that.
defer to the clerk on that.
Okay, thank
I
you.
will say that we did hear from a number of residents who were looking for basically a summary or a recap of the listening sessions last time around. And we did publish that. I think it's on the website.
Yeah.
I'll do a summary.
And so something to that effect we'll probably want to do again.
If it's in this space, can we record it?
That's a good question.
I mean, I think the question you run into there is, are you gonna get the candor from the public?
I'm not talking about broadcasting, I'm recording it so that Deb has some things to work from for the minutes.
Oh, that's not, I
That's not gonna help?
probably wouldn't go back and listen to them.
Okay.
I did take notes during the last one and I gave them all to the former township manager
Okay,
when the summary was written. So,
Okay.
and I'm happy to do so again.
Yeah, if you can provide us with solid notes, we can certainly get I'll work with communications and we'll get a good readout
Okay.
of the meetings prepared in a timely fashion.
Fabulous.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion that we have these monitors taken off the podium for that meeting? They just kind of get in the way of open, it's like we have information they don't have.
Yeah, can
Let's
we do
take these
that?
off and just have a nice open, because we won't need these monitors. We're not
No,
going to
we
display
don't.
information.
We might need the microphones.
We need a
depending on
microphone,
How big
sure,
the crowd is.
I will ask the question.
If it can't be done, I think they can be flattened a bit
Yeah,
so
they
that they're
can be.
less in the way, but
Yeah.
I hear the concern for sure.
Yeah, it
Yep.
just puts a barrier between us we don't want to have.
Understood.
Anything else to discuss on this? No, we're all excited about it.
I'm excited.
Can we get an agenda prepared for that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Clerk Huff.
I have one other thing. I'm so sorry. Could we please have the air fixed in this room? Be cooler. By
Oh, it
then.
was really cool
An
this
attempt would be
afternoon.
great.
You just turned
At the
it,
very least, early in the day, turn it down to meat locker.
right.
We get a bunch of people in here, you never know.
Yeah,
It's stuffy real quick.
and thank you
Yes,
in
thank you.
advance.
Thank you for putting this all together as well.
Yes, we appreciate it.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 13B, which is legal counsel contract and continuing legal services. I'm not going to read that whole thing. Here's interim township manager Tim Schmidt.
Thank you. So this is one of the first items that was brought to my attention when I took the reins. Our legal services contract expires on June 30th, or July 1st technically. This goes back to 2015 originally. Let me back up and say one other thing. This does not include prosecutorial services. That's done by the Harkness Law Firm. That is not under question this evening. So this is our, everything else done by Fahey, Schultz, Burchick and Rhodes. Started through a RFP process in 2015 and they've been extended twice for 3 years each, one in 2018, one in 24. And so we are at the end of that second extension. It was quickly apparent that we could not go through a full RFP process in essentially the month that has passed. And so we had a conversation with FSBR about extending again. Essentially, the board we're seeking the board's input. There's essentially two options here. We just do another 3-year extension, or we do a 1-year extension, and functionally what happens is the new manager and the new board in January need to get on an RFP process. And so just seeking the board's input before we bring this back for formal adoption at the next meeting.
Okay, Treasurer DeShane?
I actually like the idea of a 3-year extension. We've gotten good legal work from them. They're very responsive. The thing I don't like about a 1-year extension is this is right on the first thing, the new manager starts in January, and this RFP is right there. It's a big decision for them. I think we've been satisfied with Fahey Schultz's work, and the 3-year extension to me, recognizes that. They are one of the leading law firms, if not the leading law firm in the state in terms of doing municipal work. You can see their presence at MTA meetings and MCL meetings, and they're located right here in the township. So I'll support either one, but do like the idea of taking this off the immediate agenda of the new manager in January and extending this for 3 years.
Others? Trustee Wilson?
Do we see any problem with having a new manager and a new board, which may include some of us, may not? Do you see any problem with doing the 3-year extension when we have new decision makers in place?
I have seen it go sideways, yes, but they are, to Treasurer DeShane's point, they are consummate professionals and are excellent at what they do. So
Yeah.
I am not aware of any major controversy, because that's typically what would precipitate a conflict is some major controversy, and then a new group comes in with an opposing viewpoint of said controversy.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of that situation here. I have no concerns with their work. Candidly, I could go either way, and that's why we're in front of you for this conversation.
Clerk Etheridge?
They have been our legal representative for years.
Absolutely.
Like as far back as I can look in records, I've seen Fahey Schultz be legal counsel for the township. I mean, now and again, there's someone else, but they go way back with the township, representing the township on issues and ordinances and assisting with FOIAs and agreements. So I mean, I kind of feel like Treasurer DeShane does as well. I don't see an issue with a 3-year contract, given the longevity of the relationship between Fahey Schultz law firm and Meridian Township, and the extent at which the township has been satisfied, and sometimes to above satisfaction of the services that they provide us.
Trustee Trezise?
Now, I don't have a problem with this firm and extending it 3 years, but I would say that at some point, it does pay the township to explore options. We should not be automatically renewing and extending contracts of this size and of this complexity without taking a chance to look at other options that are available. I have nothing but good things to say about this law firm. And the service they've rendered to the township. But that doesn't mean it's not worth taking a shot and seeing if there's something else out there that might serve us better. But I'm not saying that we need to do this in the first year. So I could support a 3-year extension.
I'll add that, I've been exceedingly pleased with the work of Fahey Schultz throughout my tenure on the board. And, if this were 2025, I would have absolutely no reason not to support a 3-year extension of the contract. My concern would be that there will be turnover on the board. It's baked in, there will be 2 new members of the board, at least, effective November 21st. And so, the question is, do we lock ourselves and our successors into a 3-year contract, well, essentially a 2.5-year contract? Or do we give them the opportunity to make that decision in the first 6 months of their being a new board? So as I say, I came into I reviewed the packet and the materials, and I was prepared to come in and say, hey, I think that a 1-year extension may be more prudent to let whoever gets elected in November have the opportunity to decide for themselves. But that said, as I've pointed out, I have no issue with Fahey Schultz. They are a premier and an excellent set of attorneys. And I, from a philosophical perspective, I have no issue with giving them a 3-year extension. But I understand that, it could lead to a sticky moment for the next board when they come in, if for whatever reason they want to make a change and they're stuck in a contract. Because the last thing you want to do is get into a legal battle with your lawyers over your contract. So it would be my recommendation that we consider a 1-year extension of the contract, and let the next board and manager sit down and go to bid to do that. Which, again, I will say again, has nothing to do with my personal belief of the job that they've done, but it's simply a matter of whether we tie the hands of the next board. Treasurer DeShane.
That's just maybe a compromise, a 2-year extension. So that way we don't lock them in too long, but we let the new manager and the new board get settled, and then January of '26, we put this up for an RFP. Everyone's got their footing by then. The new board members would have a chance to review the work of the law firm, and then 2026, we'd award the contract with another 3-year contract, would it come up in '29, which is the year after the next election. So it gives each board, gives each board a year to appreciate or not appreciate the work of Fady Schultz before they renew it.
Clerk Catherine?
How'd you know? You knew I was gonna say something.
I'm getting a feel for it.
Thank you, thank you Supervisor Hendrickson. I think I agree with the 1-year extension. After listening to my fellow board members talk about it being the prudent thing to do. It's just the prudent thing to do. We've been in contract with them a number of years. We are very satisfied with the product and the work. But I also do agree that it is the prudent thing to allow the new board and the new manager, and financially speaking, it's prudent to put this out to bid. It's the responsible thing to do with taxpayer dollars.
Trustee Trezise?
And that's true, and just because we put it out for an RFP doesn't mean we're gonna change our counsel.
Correct.
It's just to see if there's a different option that appeals more so than the firm. So I can go with the 1 year, I can approve the 2-year, I can approve the 3. We need some continuity now, and so whatever the wish of the board is.
Trustee Sunderland, anything you'd like to add?
I'm thinking 1 year might be too short to give this topic a full look-see. So I think I'm going going for the 2-year. And then, see, this is a election year, so I'm not sure that our timing was good here. Anyway.
Just as a informational question.
Yeah.
Do we, you've spoken to the attorneys about a 1-year and a 3-year, it sounds like. Do you think that they would be open and amenable to a 2-year extension if offered?
I'm certain they are. They're confident that in their services, and they're confident candidly that they'll win the RFP when it goes out. They knew it was coming eventually. I mean, it's been a long period of time. It's only good practice to do it every once in a while on these long-term contracts. So if the will of the board is 2 years, I'm certain that Mr. Patterson and I can have that conversation, and shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Well, I've seen anything. One.
I think we need a law
2,
firm.
and 2. Right.
I'll go 2.
Okay.
Two's
It's like two's a compromise, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that we can all agree that 2 is,
I swung that over there.
I think that 2 might be the will of the board.
Absolutely. We will have this back for final adoption.
Thank you
Next
very
meeting.
much.
Great.
Okay. Last is item 13C, last of our discussion items, I should say. The 2025 budget schedule as recommended by interim township manager Tim Schmidt.
Yeah, so this is, as I've mentioned a couple times, we're trying to get out in front of this a little bit this year. Add in a couple of meetings, further discussion, so that there can be a little more back and forth between the manager and the board with respect to priorities. So at our next meeting, I will present to you sort of the initial top-level priorities from the staff. And I would ask that if the board has specific priorities, they provide them at that time, so we can start then working with finance director and the department heads to develop the budget. We will ask all the staff to have their formal budgets in by the end of June. Director Ianni and I will review, put everything together, meet with department heads through July, and then be back in August for sort of a secondary discussion about, okay, here's what made the cut, here's what didn't, here's where we still have questions, things like that. And then we will make final changes and distribute the budget to the board. So we're trying to at least build in a couple of discussions before the budget is actually distributed. That's just the way I function. I'd prefer to have the conversation in advance as opposed to at the very end. And then the board will hold the required public hearing and make final adoption. And we have built in, as we always do, the extra potential meeting if we had to at the end of September, if for some reason something happened and we needed it. And so this is the rough schedule. Again, I'll follow up with an email to sort of further explain the idea of the budget priority is, give you an example of sort of what I know is coming and what I know is being asked for, and so you can get a sense of where we're coming from and start to develop your thoughts and priorities as well. So would welcome any feedback on this. I suppose in the past, the board has actually adopted this budget. I'm not entirely sure why, but you're welcome to take action on this. At the next meeting, we can bring it back for action if you'd like.
Okay. Board members, any questions or discussion on this topic? Treasurer DeShane.
We have a lot going on in the next board meeting agenda, so I think I'm going to move to suspend our rules and take action on this item tonight.
Support.
There's been a motion to suspend our rules by Treasurer DeShane, supported by Clerk Guthrie, to take action on item 13C this evening. Any discussion on that topic?
And that is to adopt the schedule?
This is
Then to
to
adopt the
suspend the
schedule.
rules, to adopt the
Thank you.
schedule, yeah.
Okay.
Any discussion on suspension of the rules? Seeing none, all those in favor of suspension of the rules, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion to suspend our rules and take action this evening has been passed. Treasurer DeShane.
I move to adopt the 2025 budget schedule as presented by interim manager Schmidt, as presented on item
13C.
13C in tonight's packet.
Support.
Moved by Treasurer DeShane, supported by Clerk Guthrie. Discussion on the item. Treasurer DeShane.
It's a good schedule. It's thorough enough. There's a lot to be done. And so we can agree on the schedule and let you and your team get to work.
Clerk Guthrie.
If adopted tonight, we'll stay on track. Be good for everyone. We'll all know what's going on.
Good.
Other comments? As one of the board members who requested to be brought into the process a little earlier, let me just say thank you for hearing that feedback and for including us. I think passing the budget, as we've discussed several times today at various meetings that we've had today, discussing the budget is one of our two biggest functions that we do, right? We hire the manager and we pass the budgets, and everything else is optional. And so this, getting input a little earlier in the process doesn't leave us where we're forced to make the decisions in October to defund things that directors have been expecting and promised, and lets us get out ahead of those and bring some of our ideas to the discretionary budget. And I think that's a wise move. And it allows us to avoid difficult, sticky conversations about pulling things back that have been promised. And so for that, I'm very thankful. And also, it makes it so that when we have the budget presented to us in its nearing final form in August and September, we avoid there being massive surprises about things that are or are not included in there. And that's just helpful to everyone.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, ultimately, this is all about, we have several department heads that this is going to be their first and a half go around with the budget. We have a couple of complicated sticky projects floating out there between the community center and the fire truck issue that we're dealing with. So the more we can talk about these things up front and prepare everyone for what resolution we'll know and what resolution we won't know, the better. Because candidly, there's going to be a few things that roll over probably to the first quarter or the second quarter next year. We know this is coming, we just don't know how much it is yet. And so there's going to be a placeholder that's going to need to be addressed.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have not voted on this. We have moved it. We have not voted. All those in favor of the motion to approve the 2025 township budget schedule as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. 14 on our agenda is comments from the public. Any public members wishing to make comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment at 7:14. Item 15 is other matters and board member comments. Any other discussion? Clerk Guthrie.
I thank you, Supervisor Hendrickson. I am proud to announce that the township will be receiving almost $200,000 in reimbursement from the state for the presidential primary election from the grant that we wrote. So I am proud to announce that. I mean, and that was just the presidential primary, so.
Very nice.
Yeah. Yep, so that's coming back to us.
Any other board member comments? I'll add that we did receive some good news, albeit preliminary good news, about federal funding for the senior and community center that we've been talking about. While nothing has been passed and no dollars have officially been allocated, we have been named one of the 15 projects that Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin will be going to bat for in the requested amount of $7.5 million, though none of us are under the impression that they're actually going to give us that much. But that project has been included in her request for federal funding for the next cycle of the Community Project Fund.
We should know in December.
We should know in December, and as a reminder, every dollar that we bring in from other sources, which includes state money, federal money, county money, philanthropic donations, is a dollar less that we have to spend on the construction of the senior and community center. So exciting news from Congresswoman Slotkin's office, and we thank her for inclusion in that, in those budgetary requests. Any other comments? Seeing none, the last item on our agenda is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support. Moved by Trustee Wilson, supported by Treasurer DeShane. Any, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the board stands adjourned at 7:17 PM.